Everyone has a story. Stories have power. They help us understand each other. This is Jessop's Journal.
Hello, Doug.
Hey, Angela, great to meet you.
Well, welcome to my studio.
This is phenomenal. Angela, it's time to sign into Jessop's Journal.
All right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Doug Jessop. Welcome to this episode of Jessop's Journal. Today, I am in a beautiful studio, an art studio. I mean, it's a sculpture studio. And this lady right here, this is Angela Johnson. She's the person that's done all this stuff. So Angela, number one, thank you so much for inviting us into your gallery. This is some pretty cool stuff. How long have you been doing this sculpture thing?
I've been working on the Tree of Life presentation about 2.5 years.
Wow. Okay. Now, there is a block of, I'm guessing this is clay.
Yes.
So what's the story behind that?
Yes, this lovely block of a water-based clay in this plastic bag, it's to tell my story. Okay. I started over 25 years ago, and my journey began on a very tight pivot from singing to sculpting. I took voice lessons from the time I was 13 to my late 30s, and had many wonderful performing opportunities, but that special morning, a message came to me from God that said, you will never accomplish your ultimate vocal goals. Well, nothing was going to get in my way. I believed in the philosophy, you can accomplish anything you put your mind to, and that's exactly what was going to happen. But God had different plans for me, and I didn't know it, but I went on an override kind of an experience where I went to an art supply store. I bought a block of water-based clay, one sculpting tool, and 4 hours later, there was a portrait bust of a little girl on my kitchen table.
Wow.
I had never taken any art classes. I was totally focused on vocal performance, and that was it. So it was as though God's finger, just like the Sistine Chapel and Michelangelo's depiction, God reaching down and touching my heart and telling me it was now time for me to develop a talent I didn't know I had. And all the devastation that I had felt was immediately gone. And the amazing thing, Doug, is that I felt like I'd come home.
Well, yeah, you've done a pretty dang good job from one block. And so you are actually very well known as a sculptor for a special presentation out at Thanksgiving Point with the depictions of Christ. So tell me a little bit more about that.
That's the Light of the World Garden. There are 35 monumental bronze statues that comprise 15 scenes of events from the light of Christ.
Now, why the Light of the World? Why was it called that?
When I started sculpting, I created probably 12 private commissions for individuals. But then I got on my knees and asked God what He wanted me to do with the gift that He'd given me. And as answer to that prayer, I was given a concept of a sculpture garden depicting the teachings of Christ. I have always loved Jesus Christ. And so I was enthralled with this challenge. I wasn't shown where it would go. I wasn't shown what scenes I was to depict. The only thing I was given was the certitude that it would happen. So it was years later that I met Karen Ashton. And in our discussions, she invited this body of art to be in her beautiful Ashton Gardens at Thanksgiving Point.
Wow. Good person to know.
Yes, she is.
Wow. And I understand that because of that project, there's an even bigger project coming, which is kind of the reason we're looking at all this neat stuff. What's this project called?
Oh, you're very right. This project is called the Tree of Life presentation. And it is a companion piece to the Light of the World, in so much that this is a witness of Jesus Christ from the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
And it focuses on the vision of the Tree of Life, but also focuses on the personalities and prophets and kings from the Book of Mormon.
Okay. I love bronzes because they have this certain patina, this age. I mean, there's a difference between one that's kept in a box, basically, and the one that's touched and felt and everything. Describe what that's like.
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I am very thankful to be in the three-dimensional art form of sculpture, because I'm a very tactile person, and I really want people of all ages to connect with the statues. And when they have the desire to reach out and reverently touch Christ, they are completely welcome to do this. And I've noticed that certain favorite parts of the statues have received what I call that love patina. For example, the prints of the nails in his hands. That love patina turns the bronze to a kind of gold because it removes the patina, but I welcome that because it's a very tactile experience where people can actually connect in some way with a depiction of Jesus Christ.
You know, it just comes to my mind, I got to think that little kids would absolutely love you. It's like, I get to touch something.
I get to touch something.
So is there a particular place or thing that you've noticed that children are attracted to it in your current project?
In Light of the World, they love to sit among the chickens.
Oh, really?
The chickens, where it's his gathering. And this one little boy gave a profound sermon about this, and he told his grandma, "Grandma, this is where Jesus protects the chickens like he protects us from predators." And so they love to get up in his lap and sit on his lap. They love to lay their heads on his shoulders and wrap their arms around his arms. And that's one of the most endearing things that I see is when little children love on Jesus.
Isn't that neat?
It is wonderful.
So what's the inspiration for this? I mean, that was a big project, but this is beyond big. I mean, this is humongous. How big is this going to be when it's all said and done?
That's a very good question, because right now there are over 200 statues. And the thing that I want to share is when people say, well, where did this start? Where did the desire to do a depiction of the Tree of Life begin? And the stunning thing is, we were just talking about children. I remember being 5 years old. And the very first time I heard the story of Lehi's vision of the Tree of Life, it encoded on my soul in a very deep way. So when I began to sculpt, the echo came through the decades of my life, and I knew that at one point in time, I would sculpt a depiction of the Tree of Life. I was not ready to do it at the time I began the Light of the World. I am a different person now, and that the work that I've done is the work of just over 2.5 years. So it's a phenomenal thing, but the work of the Light of the World prepared not only me, but the relationship with Karen Ashton at Thanksgiving Point for the unfolding of this magnificent, massive presentation. And the basic underlying message of it is what embraces the light of the world and the story that we are all children of God, and that He is a loving Father and wants the very best for us. So it is my joy to be able to create a diverse representation of ethnic groups, ages, circumstances, struggles, trials, pain, victory, triumphant, and what God is willing to do to bless our lives and bring us home to Him.
So I see up there is, the tree, okay, and it's lit. Light is radiating from the tree.
And it was designed to have the metaphorical symbolism of light that radiates out from within our souls when we have a commitment to truths of eternity, principles of light. For example, love is that. Love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. The truths that Christ taught about loving God first and loving each other, that creates a light in our countenances. And that's what the Tree of Life is meant to be symbolic of, is that light radiating from inside.
Okay, now I notice that there's an iron rod that goes up this mountain, up this hill towards Christ. Yes. What's that iron rod represent?
It's going up a very steep hill. Angle of this path is difficult. The surface underneath the feet is not dependable. It is very irregular, it's very organic. Even though we have similar life's experiences, each person's own individual journey is fraught with uncertainties. We cannot take for granted the very next step that we're going to make, because it could be a misstep. This iron rod that you're referring to is representative of Jesus Christ, the Word of God. As it says in the Gospel of John, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So the Word of God is that steadfast, those steadfast truths that we can hold on to, that in spite of the difficulties, we have the faith that He will not leave us comfortless.
I've noticed that some of the clay, instead of being this light brown, is really dark. What's the difference between the light and the dark?
There are two elements that no matter where on earth you are raised, every person knows the difference between light and darkness. And when the beautiful sun comes up in the morning and when the sun goes down at night. So the coloration of the clay is to also communicate the reality of darkness and light. We know when individuals interact with us with a spirit of light, and we also can instantly tell when someone is coming at us with a dark agenda. So this is part of the metaphor of this presentation, because it being the story of mankind, it is the story of the challenges of man's inhumanity to man and how it grieves God, because we are a family. And this story of the Tree of Life is about a family and their own personal trials and adversity right there in their family.
You mean families aren't perfect?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, there's one part that I really, really love, where there is a mother and a son. Okay, and the son's like right on the precipice of falling. And here's this mother and the anguish and emotion. And the thing that I guess I look at is that parents have had the same concerns for their children for eternity.
Right.
You know, but then I also notice that on the dark side here, okay, you've got chains and you've got some of the typical things you look at, but then there's this one little figure that's still light in the dark place, but she's peering behind a column. Who does that person represent?
In this presentation, where the people are in a dark realm with dark colors and the chains and the dysfunctional, narcissistic, self-centered behavior, there are children. And when guests come to my studio and look at the presentation, they go, well, what are children doing? Children are innocent. And they are the personification of innocence. So I tell them, many times rampant in our world is man's inhumanity, where slavery goes on. And we hear situations of human trafficking. She is part of that story. The tears coming down her face are not only because she is being trafficked, but she can't really go home because the trafficking is originating from her home environment. I have not created this presentation to gloss over the concept of pain and the little children depicting human trafficking in the great and spacious building are that story. And so many times in our world, the voices of truth get very, very confused and very mixed. But when it comes to the suffering of little children, the clarity should be crystal clear.
Oh, yeah.
Of what is right and what is wrong, and what is happening here, what is happening to that little girl hiding behind the pillar is wrong.
Yes, it is. Now, if that's the ultimate sorrow in this whole sculpture project, there's got to be a juxtaposition.
Yes.
What's the most joyous figure here?
Oh, wow. You're going to make me emotional. It's another little girl. It's another little girl and a set of children up by Jesus Christ. That the depth and intensity of joy radiating out of their countenances is so genuine, is so spontaneous, that Christ's invitation for us to become like little children is represented in their eyes. And it's my belief that Jesus Christ comes right down into the realm of darkness to be there so that we are not alone. And that those little children up by Christ may have suffered many things, but the understanding that the Savior of mankind that walked our journeys with us in Gethsemane and on the cross, that the epitome of joy is the joy that they are expressing in their open arms, the delight in their eyes as they're looking up at the only being that truly understands them, that truly walked their journey with them. And the oneness that they feel from him is reciprocal. The joy is coming from his soul, from his body, from his eyes, and is returning from the countenances of the little children.
And we talked a little bit about this before, but there are certain people here that are, I mean, they're all quote unquote real people, but there are certain people that are based on historical people. We've seen their pictures, we know what they look like. There was one commission that you did for a young lady that passed too early in life.
Yes.
Okay, and tell me about that commission and the tie-in with all this.
Well, that commission will be part of the Tree of Life. And the important tie-in to all of this is the heartache, the excruciating pain that she endured in her lifetime is part of the depths of, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, of bringing and inviting contemplation, because this commission that I did of Brooke Folkman, I was so stunned by her frequent journals and beautiful writings of her faith in Jesus Christ. Not even Jesus Christ was saved from suffering. The most ultimate suffering was his. So this is to really create that connection and that open discussion and that bond of love, which in the end is more powerful than the pain. The pain terrifies us, but the love heals us. And that is the mission that has been and is the ongoing mission of Jesus Christ.
Well, call me an optimist, but I do believe that love conquers all.
It does, and I agree with you.
Now, there's one thing I did notice, okay, so then there are historical figures that people never met, or there's not any kind of hey, here's their picture, you know. How in the world do you figure out these people? I mean, like, okay, there's this guy right here, okay, he's holding a banner.
Yeah, this is
Okay,
the banner.
he's got his stuff out there. Who is he, and how did you figure out what he looks like?
He is a captain, and he's a captain of an enormous army. And it was a time in the civilization from the beginning roots of this family that I was telling you about in the Book of Mormon. And the challenge is that tyranny was rising, and in the whole cause of tyranny was the removal of religious rights, was the bondage that it would put families, individuals, children in, and he was not okay with that. So he took charge of this enormous army, and what he did in the banner that you are referencing that is unfurled, he wrote his title of liberty on that banner, which stated so very clearly that the love of God, the love of faith, the love of freedom, the love of family were what they were fighting for. It wasn't for power. It wasn't for bloodshed. It was to protect the rights of the family, to worship God. And his unswerving attitude ruled and conquered the day. It was very difficult. There was a great deal of bloodshed, but it's the righteous leaders, it's the strong moral compass of leaders that can help us stand up and stand up for what we believe in.
I love the fact that you've got all race, religion, and creed kind of all under one roof here. Are any of those people based on someone that really existed, or are they kind of a mind's eye capture?
Well, I wanted to be really careful. I wanted to keep the message broad. I wanted to represent on the diversity of cultures, but of the commonality of the struggle, of the human struggle. So I didn't want to take this particular person and only focus on his time and his place, but to honor different ethnic groups. And the tragedy for me was that I had the limitations because the diversity of the children of God is incredible. So I chose the Asian, the Native Americans, and the Africans to express the perspective of the diversity of the children of God, and I kind of pushed the envelope with regards to their hairstyles, their clothings, because in the end, when you put that over to the side, the issues that people face no matter where they live or at what time or what religion or what culture, the issues we go through are very much the same.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's the thing I look at is if you read the Bible and you go, okay, gosh, these people are having the same concerns
As I am.
and I got a much bigger house and I know where my food's coming from and blah, blah, blah. But yet everybody, and most of it comes down to they're worried about their family.
Right.
And the family is kind of the heart of everything. To me, life comes with scars. Okay, this is my journal. It's Jessop's journal. This one, has all kinds of beat up marks and everything. And the last question that I like to ask people, and yeah, it can be a little esoteric, but it is what it is. How do you want to leave your mark?
I do appreciate the metaphor of scars. The mark that I want to leave on earth is a truth of a God, a loving Father in heaven, and that each of his children is extremely special to him, more so than how we treat each other, and that the love is made manifest through Jesus Christ, and that through all the feelings of rejection, of betrayal, of the illnesses of the body and the mind, that in the end love will triumph, and to have that faith and that hope, even though at times life seems so dark, but that love will conquer all. And my mark that I would leave is that my life was an example of my love for God the Father and his Son, Jesus Christ. And that people, when they look upon my work, will truly feel God's love for them.
My grandfather, the last words that he said in this world were, "Please remember me." I'm looking at this and the legacy that you have. I'm pretty sure that people are going to remember you. So thank you so much for coming on Jessop's Journal. And while we're at it, a couple other people I want to thank. Of course, we got Rustico, the guys that make my journal. It is Jessop's Journal. Taylor Cooperative, does the clothes. JW Custom Hats. And then, of course, we have the folks at Clear and Ogden's Own Distillery. The thing that I want people to remember is that everyone has a story. This woman is telling some really, really impressive stories. And those stories, they have power, and they help us understand each other. With another entry into Jessop's Journal and Angela Johnson, I'm Doug Jessop, ABC4 News.